Hello. The program that you're about to watch is presented by the Online Academy of the Integrative Law Institute at Commonweal. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to say hello to everybody who is joining us now. I want to welcome you to the second webinar presentation of the Integrative Law Institute Online Academy. I'm Pauline Tesler, and I'm co-founder and first president of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. And I also am director of the Integrative Law Institute at Commonweal. Our mission is to reclaim law as a healing profession. Collaborative practice is at the core of our work. The reason for that is that divorce is the most common reason why ordinary folks will encounter the legal system on the civil side. So the purpose of this series of free webinars is to give you ideas and tools for making collaborative divorce much more visible in our communities and in our cultures, as the first thought that any person should have when thinking about getting professional help in a divorce. For the 30 years that we've all been doing collaborative law and collaborative practice, what we know is that although a person facing divorce will often ask a wise counselor for advice about what kind of professional help to get, what kind of lawyer to go to, perhaps they ask their accountant or their minister or their rabbi or priest or a business colleague, most of those referral sources still, even in our own professions, don't know that we exist. And I think that's not acceptable anymore. So my goal in this series is to talk with thought leaders who can give you ideas that will leave you excited and pretty well equipped to go out in an organized way with your colleagues and educate leaders in your communities about why collaborative divorce matters so much and why they should never be sending clients, friends, or family members anywhere except to a collaborative professional. I'm going to introduce my guest, Ross Foote, in just a minute. He's going to talk about how he launched collaborative practice in the state of Louisiana and how you can partner with local family law judges and the judges in your state to build a broad awareness of collaborative divorce and why it matters. He's going to begin by helping us understand what a judge can do for your collaborative divorce community and what the barriers are for turning judges into allies and ideas and strategies for what we can do about that. But first, of course, I'm going to give you some reminders about Zoom. I'm sure you're all expert at it by now, we all are. But let me remind you that we've got a chat box. You've got a chat box that you can use. And I'd like you, while I'm introducing the webinar, to please go to your chat box and just let us know who you are, where you're signing in from, and what your profession is. After you do that, I don't want you to use chat anymore for this webinar. Rather, I'd like you to go to the screen, which reminds me there's two icons to the left of the chat box, because that's where we would love it if you would post your questions and comments so that about 15 minutes before we're going to finish up, Ross and I will turn there and address your questions and concerns. You can upvote other people's questions and concerns. So if you go to the questions and answers and see one that you think is a great question, all you do is look at that thumbs up icon underneath the question, click it, you'll be liking that question. It will go to the top and Ross and I will start there. Last comment about Zoom is we've had technical issues about getting you what we've promised, which is a link to the recorded on-demand webinar series. We've just about solved it, and what I'm going to do is wait until the last of the webinars is finished this Friday, and then everybody who registered for any of the webinars will get links to all of them, and you can share them with your colleagues. You can register for the on-demand version. Now, Ross. Ross is a force of nature. He was a general jurisdiction judge in the state of Louisiana for over 13 years, and his responsibilities included divorce court. He was, while on the bench, a member of the board of directors of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. I think he's the only judge to have held that position. And while he was on the bench and while he was on the IACP board, he was co-producer of a video that advises families why they should never go to court during a divorce. He's made a number of presentations to family law judges around the world, and he created in Louisiana a judicial mentoring program and is responsible for mentoring some really first-rate family law judges in that state. He's an adjunct instructor at the National Judicial College in Reno, and he's taught courses there about judges and spirituality. So you can tell he is not your usual run-of-the-mill family law judge. He's also the host of a public radio program about photography on National Public Radio. And right now, he's doing the work of the angels by serving on the Louisiana Public Defender Board, where he is trying to ensure that people on death row get adequate representation. So Ross, good morning.
Good morning, Pauline.
It's just a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, actually, right now, it's not the work of angels. It's a great joy because for 25 years, I've never had a conversation with you that I didn't really enjoy. So it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm going to start out by asking you to explain how you first learned about collaborative divorce.
Well, actually, it was an article that you wrote. I was on the domestic bench, and we had domestic jurisdiction, and just struggling with what had happened. I was 7 years past any domestic cases as a lawyer, flying on an airplane, reading a book. I ran into your article on collaborative divorce, the therapeutic justice book, and realized I was reinventing the wheel. I was trying to figure out some way to keep pushing this back. But I realized that I was the problem, that the system was the problem, and I was trying to figure out a way to do it without using the court system. As I kept moving it closer and closer back, I was reinventing the wheel. And of course, from there, I picked up the phone and called you.
I'd like it if you just give one very quick anecdote. Asking a Southerner to give an anecdote is always risky, but you did tell me of where you were and what you were doing when you had that moment of realization that you were the problem, and you described it as holding your pencil.
Right. I was in court probably 100 cases into the practice, and there were a couple that were just using the children as weapons, fighting back and forth, and I was frustrated. I had no resources, I had no understanding, and I found myself picking up my pen and saying, do you understand with this pen, I can take your children away and neither of you get them? And when I heard that come out of my mouth, I was like, this is broken. I mean, and that's what started me on the pursuit of, I've got to have some other resource to do. And like I said, that's when I called you and said, I need mental health resources. You being a good lawyer, took a call from an unknown judge, but if they say judge, lawyers answer the phone, which is something to remember. And you referred me to Peggy and to Peggy Thompson and Nancy Ross. And in the space of an afternoon, I made 3 lifelong friends.
Now, you also managed to do something very concrete and very significant, unlike a lot of judges who realize that they're the problem and then they just sit there continuing to wring their hands about it. You got a very significant grant. Would you explain how you happened to get it and what you did with it?
Yes, I came to realize that I had to get people involved, and I started calling immediately my friends, my CPA, and the mental health professional in my supper group, and said, what can we do with this? We've got this collaborative idea. And they said, we need money. So I called a local health foundation. And I tried nobody gives money to lawyers for legal proceedings. So I called a health foundation, and was going to pitch $20,000 to make a video. And I pitched it as a children's mental health issue.
Oh. And
I sat down, and I got all excited, was telling them we can do this and how you shouldn't be using the court and all the stuff that happens. And the guy looked at me. I was asking for $20,000. He said, you're talking about $200,000. And I said, at least. And
Pivot.
they gave us $200,000, which not only let us produce the video, which I will make available. I'm in the process of getting it into a Dropbox so you can put it into your resource once you get all that up and running. And anybody that participates, you can buy it on Amazon now, but I will make it available to them. But we also—
You mean at no cost, so that they—
at no cost. You know, I mean, this isn't about money. This is about saving the world. And so what we also did, we had a leftover money. We put on a design training system and had Peggy Thompson, Nancy Ross, Talia Katz, Stu Webb came. You couldn't. You were conflicted out of the first one in Alexandria. But we had the A-team.
But I did come. I did that.
Oh, you came to New Orleans, yes. And so we put up a full interdisciplinary model, and we did training and would not allow anybody to take a case until everybody was trained. And that was on the $200,000. It sponsored some trips to IACP. I got to IACP at one of the meetings, I think it was Galveston, and the next thing you know, I'm on the board.
So what I want to remind you, well, I don't have to remind you, you remember, is that one of the people who attended the New Orleans 3-day collaborative team training that you're talking about, that your grant funded, was a judge that you had mentored who became a family court judge of great renown, Madeline Landrew. Could you say a bit about who she is and what the impact was of the collaborative trainings upon her?
Yeah, Madeline has a passion and a heart the size of the Gulf of Mexico. And when she gets roiled up, just like a hurricane, I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to come in with that power. I was her mentor judge, and she was assigned to the family bench, which unfortunately so many courts do. You start off with the family law because it's the dirty doctor. Nobody wants it, which is unfortunate because it's the art of judging, not the science of judging. And she was flabbergasted. Now, she has a lot of experience and worked with that. And she said, we've got to do something different. And I started explaining collaborative, and she said, you know, I'm in. Let's do it. How do you translate that? How do you take the horsepower and get the traction? And I said, you get Pauline, and you get Nancy, and you get the rest of the crew, and you come do training. And she put together a training and found some hotel rooms, and we came to New Orleans, and you came down, and for 3 days, we trained most of South Louisiana, people that were interested in doing that particular work. Very dynamic.
So the existence of the collaborative practice movement in the state of Louisiana is attributable to 2 powerhouse divorce court lawyers. Judges, divorce judges. So that's something to really think about. Now, I'd like to turn for a minute now to what you can say in just a little while. I know you could talk quite a while about this. I want you to share what you know about the behind the scenes thinking of family law judges and how the family courts are affected by this. I'm going to ask you to talk first, second, and third about 3 questions. 1, what are the potential benefits of collaborative practice groups forming alliances and partners with family law judges? You've already explained some of the things you were able to do, but with their judges, what could be the potential advantages? Secondly, what are the barriers to getting family law judges to understand how important collaborative divorce is for families and children? And then the third question is going to be, how can practice groups and practice organizations at every level, from local to international, address those barriers and enlist family court judges as their allies? And I want to, before we jump in, I want to remind you, I've looked at the chat column. I don't know if you have, but we've got people from all over the world. And on the recorded version, the on-demand version, there'll be people from even more remote time zones who can't join us right now. We've got people from Italy, from Portugal, from British Columbia. We've got people from England. We've got people from, another one from Italy, Quebec, all over the place. And so as you're talking about family law judges and family law courts, the details and the names of the functions are going to differ from culture to culture. But in your experience, fundamentally, are family law courts all over the world similar, or are there distinct differences that we should be mindful of?
The family dynamic is so consistent across the world that it's amazing to me, the similarities. I have sat in courts in Toronto. I've sat in courts in London. In fact, some of my London friends actually got me to sit on the bench with a judge to watch it from behind the bench as he tried a custody case. But for the accent, it could have been a transcript in my court. I mean, it was amazing. And his lament was the exact same. I have no resources to handle this. Why am I doing this? So it is a universal issue, and it is a global issue, which excites me about now having the time to get back into this. The problem comes with the judges they're not trained. You don't have any history where you take over, so it's on the job training, and you hit the door of the first domestic court with no real training in trauma, training in law, but family law is easy. Family dynamics are impossible, especially for a legal mindset. I mean, the judge is a welder who is welding rulings. Unfortunately, the materials we deal with in domestic court are leather and cloth, and a welding rod just scorches them if it doesn't incinerate them completely. There's no way to assemble what we do from our legal training, and there's no real way to anticipate it till you get there. So that's the first benefit is education. The lawyers, the mental health people, and I think they all need to go together to address the judges. Lawyers, obviously the entree, because unfortunately most judges don't want that touchy-feely stuff. Okay, we've heard that so many times. Oh, that's touchy-feely. I'm not a social worker. I'm a judge that applies the law. Well, you're applying a law with social dynamics, and you can't avoid being a social worker if you want to be a good family court judge. So the benefits of the collaborative practice partnering with the judges is you educate the judges who in turn have entree into other judges. You educate as to the shortcomings of what your parties need. And you give them an opportunity to grow up and to take a leadership role in the judiciary. Most judges have a touch of vanity. I mean, most of them want to be seen. Yeah. Most of them want to be seen as powerful and persuasive. They're persuasive because of the robe, but don't tell them that. I mean, play along. But what you have to do is get into there to let them see what benefit you can have to them. And the benefit is you can give them more time. You can give them more time on the cases that really need it. We all know, everybody on this webinar knows 5% of the cases need a third-party decision maker. And what you can do is not only free up time for that judge and explain to them in the partnership, we're going to take the stuff away you don't need to be doing so that we can have you when we really need you. And a judge to be needed is important. And that's what you want to play to them. But those are the barriers that you go into it is, it's new, the judges don't understand it. It's not law, it's family. Most of them don't understand it. And I'm generalizing. There are some very good judges out there that are trying very hard, and it eats away at their soul because it is not, you're welding that cloth and it's burning. So what you need to do to those, that's a barrier, is get to that judge and say, let me help you help yourself.
Perfect. That's the pitch. As we all know, the way that you get somebody interested in something that they don't think they're interested in, don't think they need, and they're too busy for, is to answer that question that everybody has in the back of their mind, which is, what's in this for me? What's in it possibly for me, the family law judge, to spend my valuable time listening to people who are not judges, who are not going to help me solve my problem? And you're saying, tell them how you're going to solve the problem. And the first thing that I heard you say is we're going to lighten your load. Now, what we know in the United States, and I know it's the same in Canada and maybe the same elsewhere in the world, is that self-represented parties are overwhelming the courts, both because, in family law matters, both because many of them simply couldn't afford to pay the professional fees required to get a divorce lawyer. But for many of them, they can well afford us. And what they know is that divorce lawyers are going to make a bad situation worse. They're scared of us. So all of these people are flooding into the courts as self-represented parties. Courts were not made to deal with self-represented parties. So what specifically can we do for a family law judge that would lighten the family law judge's load? What are we going to say concretely that answers the question, what's in it for me?
Let me just take one brief second to challenge something you had said. You asked, what is the thinking behind the domestic court? Well, that assumes a fact, not an evidence.
Okay.
What we can do concretely is think for them. Okay. We can think for the courts and say, you're not planning on what's happening with all of these pro se litigants that are coming before you, who can no longer afford a lawyer, or because very few lawyers want to do this anymore. What we can do is set up a help desk. We can, as a group, provide some resources to explain people what the process is about to happen. We can have a referral system. If you refer people out, not to me as a lawyer, you can't make it a money-making thing.
Precisely.
If the judge perceives you're in here hustling business away from the people that have been stroking that judge and saying you're so big and strong, and that's one of the other inherent problems. The bar for the family court is usually very small, and the judges have these very close relationships with them. And to go in and tell the judge concretely what you're doing with those other people is not a good idea, doesn't work. So you have to vet the judges. You have to find somebody who has a degree in philosophy or art or English, not in political science or math.
There you go.
You have to find somebody that has an interest in bettering the world. You can't sell them on bettering the world to start with, unless your name is Madeline Landrew. You can find the Madelines that will come to it. And you can find the Rosses that will come to it. You just need to educate them. You need to get out and do that. And then you start with, I can free up your time. I can make your job easier. And in exchange, you can do more for me with your innovation and your energy on the cases where you make the difference, and we need you to make that difference.
That is a terrific, succinct, concrete set of suggestions, including what I hadn't heard you say before, which is how you find those judges who are going to be receptive to what we have to offer, which is look for the humanists. I don't know why that occurred to me. Yeah, look for the humanists.
Find the new judge. Find the new judge you think may be there, or find the burned out judge and say, this has taken a toll on you, and we appreciate your commitment to public service. Take another step and be a leader, and let us shift the load. That's what you've given to them, is shifting the load.
Now, I don't want to turn there yet, but at the end of this webinar, I'm going to put up a slide that has some resources that people can use to follow up with your suggestions. And on that resource list, among other things, there are some links to programs that collaborative practice groups in various places in the United States and Canada, and I know it's happening elsewhere too, just those are the ones I could find quickly, programs that they've been offering in partnership with their local family court judges. And they are programs very much like what you are describing. And they are model programs that you can take and run with, you folks who are participating today. You can make them better. But the key to it is making an alliance with your family court judges, as Ross is suggesting. So,
another resource that just came to mind on that is, talk to those judges that have the programs that are working and ask them if they will field calls. I've mentioned to you and want to be added as a resource. Anybody that has the judge that may be interested and wants to talk, put me in touch with them. I will have that conversation. Two judges talking is a different conversation than two judges and one lawyer. Okay? So now I hadn't thought about it before, but if you have these other collaborative programs with the judges, see if those judges will agree to kind of be a spokesman in their state. I mean,
Great idea. It's a great
yeah.
idea. So that brings me right to what I was going to ask you next, which is if we analogize working with a local judge, that person is so that you can do,
You break it out.
maybe not for the others, but for you, doing the best we can here with what we got, broadband connections we got. In any event, once you have that judge who's a good ally, then you can bring your collaborative resources right to the courthouse, where you can offer that at the Law in Motion calendar, which is usually packed with pro se litigants, the judge can refer them right out in the hallway where they can sign up for your practice group's voluntary pro bono or low cost rapid collaboration resources. The judge also can issue local rules that make it much easier for lawyers who are doing full fee kinds of collaborative work to process the papers through the court and to get exempted from some of the local rules that are aimed at the people who are clogging the court with litigated motions and trials. So I describe that, analogizing it, as at the retail level. That's what a local practice group and a local judge can do to make things work better for everybody in that picture. But if we want to go to what I refer to as the wholesale level, if we want to then try to make a bigger impact statewide, we know, for example, because you've explained it to me, that new judges typically, certainly in Louisiana and in California, new judges go to something called a judicial college. And that's where they learn the basic ropes of how to be a judge, but they don't get taught anything about that high trauma nature of what they're going to run into in family law court. So is there a way that judge that we've made an ally and a partner out of, using the ideas you've given us, can that judge then partner with the collaborative practice groups in the state to get up to the wholesale level and maybe get into the judicial college, so that maybe a judge like you and a lawyer like me in other communities could give an educational program for new judges?
Yes. In fact, our Louisiana Judicial College, which Madeline Landrew basically took over and ran, does an introduction. But you have so much to do. You have to understand what you're getting when you get the brand new judge. So what you really need to do is find that judge that you've collaborated with and have them make the introduction into the Judicial College. A lawyer calling saying, I've got something good for your judges, is not going to go very far. A judge saying, I found something that made my work better and easier and is saving the world. The judicial colleges are generally looking for new and innovative ideas. So that's the partnership to prove that it works, to have the judge go to the judicial college. I would love to see IACP get a judicial division started. I would love to see the National Judicial College or the Center for State Courts really embrace this. I would love to see the ABA embrace it and get past the lawyer controlling what's happening with this, which unfortunately is often on financial reasons, and let the courts take the leadership role, which, in the pecking order, they're the leaders of the community, of the legal services. So the wholesale issues to get national, to get regional, and there's an intermediate supplier. There's the small section of your state or your country that may be 4 courts around yours. And once you get a judge that says, okay, this is actually making me go home and say, I did good today, instead of I traumatized today. Or what's worse is the ones who don't even know they traumatized. So,
excuse me.
See, you have to bark at whatever tree that has a squirrel in it. You just go for whatever you're going to do. But it is and that is a really big effort to find that leader judge that says we all should be doing this. Some will resist it until, like you so well said, what's in it for me? Until they realize I've got 30 minutes total invested in a case instead of a 4-hour hearing and writing an opinion strung out over 3 or 4 weeks while people are sitting in the hall for 4 hours waiting for their turn on rule day.
So what you're really telling us, Ross, is that when we find those humanistic, talented, energetic, local family law judges, what we have to offer them in a larger sense at this up 50,000 foot level is the opportunity to become a leader, nationally even,
right,
in a place where their leadership is desperately needed to change a picture that is intolerable for families. That's a huge thing for us to be able to offer.
Once a judge understands the power of the robe over lawyers and uses it politely, but once they understand the power of, it would please me, lawyer, if you tried this. Okay? That lawyer is
the way that I've heard this is that when the judge says jump, the lawyer says how high.
Yes. And when you say jump off the board and there's no water in the pool, they go, Judge, I'll do it. I'm going to break my legs and not be able to pay my tuition. So you have to have, that's that collaboration you were talking about with the law. You have to say, no, you will not take a financial hit. You will take an emotional boost, and you can handle more cases because you're farming out the pieces that you're not qualified to do to people that are.
But what we really need judicial allies for is not so much reaching out to the lawyers, because family lawyers, by the time they get to middle age, either they're burned out or they're alcoholic or they're completely armored and unhappy people, because it's a brutal area of law where we've got vicarious trauma every day. So those people turn to collaborative practice in pretty strong numbers once they know it's available. But what we need people like you for is to spread the word among the family law judges that this is important. And rather than looking askance at us or thinking that we're a threat to your domain or to your power, that when we align with one another, we can do enormous cultural good, enormous good, large scale for children and families. That's what you bring to the table, I think.
Well, and coupled with the burned out bulldog who has come to this because they can't do the other one too long, they can give the before and after. And you can find the burned out domestic judge that says, I couldn't keep doing it. I'm forcing the mediations just because I don't want to. I'm accepting the mediator. That's just subbing out the problem that inherently wrong with the court system. It's just not the right place.
Because court annexed mediation, where people can't get a hearing until they pass go, and the judge says go means you have to go to mandatory mediation. That's an oxymoron, if we ever heard one. Mandatory mediation. Family law judges send people to mediation that doesn't have the ability to do the kind of deep, durable conflict resolution that a transformative mediator can do in the private sector, but that a collaborative team can bring so many more resources to. And so, again, this is part of educating potentially leader judges about how they can make an enormous difference for children and families in a larger arena than that small courthouse where they feel that they're washing dirty diapers.
And most judges want to be recognized by their peers, other judges,
yes,
as leaders. And they've got to be willing to take that risk to get out. And I think that's the perfect place to do it, is to say, let's be not only thought leaders, let's be action leaders.
That's what sets you apart from the others, is you are an action person. And you're a rare bird, but I can't imagine you're the only one.
No, and you'll get some pushback. That's why I say if judges are, I mean, I've been around the country talking to people's invitations back when we could fly places, meeting with judges, and I'm happy to do the Zoom, Judge Foote at mac.com. And if you have somebody that wants to talk on a judge that's teetering, that's interested, but says, I don't believe this, I'm happy to talk with them and say, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to sick Madeline on you. I mean, just for the rest of the people, Madeline went from domestic court to the regular court to the Court of Appeals and is now the dean of the law school and is still transformed by the seminar you put on. She says that was one of those
collaborative practice.
Yeah.
Once they're in the room to understand what it can do, it speaks for itself.
Yes. So but I am very serious to all the people out there. If you've identified a judge or you want to talk, email me and I will get back in touch with you. And as soon as I get the video, I'll post it where it can be downloaded for free. I'll let you know. But that's some technology that is for people with more color in their beard. I'm working. I've got children that are going to help me get this done.
I'm going to share my screen now again for a slide that it's rather dense, but if you want to get out your phones, you can take a screenshot of it. And I'm also going to send it out to everybody who registered for this webinar after the series is done at the end of the week. And we'll talk about some of these resources. You'll have something to say about some of them, I'm sure, Ross. So let me get that screen share up. Have we succeeded?
Good.
Okay, excuse me. So what I've got up here at the top is some of those model programs that practice groups around the US and Canada have come up with for partnering with family law judges so that they are there during the Law in Motion calendars. Right there they can intervene and offer collaborative resources to people who are not represented by counsel. One from British Columbia, one from Washington, D.C., one from Ithaca, New York, and there are many more. The IACP website has, in the member section, much information about these access to justice programs. Secondly, one of the things we know that family law judges who partner with us can do to great effect is that they can promulgate local rules that make life easier for collaborative lawyers who are handling the legal side of a collaborative divorce. They also can, and down here, collaborative review articles about partnering with family law judges. We've got two different judges here. We've got a couple of articles by Ross, and you'll find the major article right here, an interview with Ross. In addition here, if you go to this link, you will find, this is some very early material and it's still just as cogent. Donna Hitchens was first a family law judge in San Francisco and then became the presiding judge of the entire Superior Court in San Francisco. She not only promulgated local rules, but she wrote a judge's letter to all parties who file for divorce in San Francisco. And at that time, it was required when you were going to serve a divorce petition and a summons on the other party, that packet that you had to serve had to include a letter from her saying, you do not belong in my courthouse. You should be going either to collaborative lawyers or to good mediators, and here's where you can find them. That's tremendously powerful. And then down here, what we've got is Ross Foote's email address that he's willing to share. You can give, if you've got a potential judge ally, judicial ally, hearing officer ally, judge to judge is, as Ross pointed out, a lot more powerful than lawyer to judge, and he's willing to have those conversations. By the time that I distribute this slide, along with the link to the recorded webinar, I will add to this a link to the video that Ross has so generously offered to share us. I'm going to now stop sharing the screen.
Pauline, one addition on that. I'm happy to talk with groups before they get to the judge. So it's not just judge. It's not just judge to judge. John Susko down in Florida, we communicate on a regular basis. But if there's a situation where you have somebody that's potential, contact me, and I'm happy to have a phone conference with you as to how to set it up with that. Because that's the link. The lawyer helping the judge help the lawyer is how this has to happen.
That is absolutely terrific. And there's an entire worldwide community that's going to be tremendously grateful for these offers, Ross. Really, I can't thank you enough for your willingness to do this. Now I'm turning to, we've got a couple of questions that we're going to look at. And we really welcome more. If you've got anything that you'd like to hear Ross talk more about, go to the question and answer icon and post it now, because we've got a bit of time. And I'm going to start with John Susko, who says, why are judges so scared about putting together orders like the San Francisco orders that define the difference between mediation and collaboration? With both counsel and party signing, very few lawyers can explain the difference between mediation and collaboration. A judge could explain the difference and why he thinks the parties ought to try collaboration. Also, well, I'll put my 2 cents in first, John. I have, for the years that I've been doing trainings and speaking engagements, I've tried to explain how it's inconceivable that one neutral could accomplish all of the different tasks and roles that a professional team across 3 disciplines with 2 lawyers and 2 mental health professionals and a child specialist can accomplish. Anybody who tries to claim that you can do the same thing is just, on the face of it, crazy. It doesn't mean that you can't do good things if you're a transformative type mediator. Now I'll let you say what you were going to say, Ross.
Well, I mean, the reason a lot of judges can't distinguish between mediation and collaborative is they don't understand it. We're back to education. You have to get to them to explain to them the core. They won't accept that refusing to come to court as anything at first glance other than you're stripping me of my authority. I have to be here to make the final decision. Well, ultimately, if it falls out, and some do, not many, you're right. You're already a resource. They fall back into that 5% where the third-party decision makers need it. But you have to convince them you're not losing your authority by doing that. And that's
Really?
that is an issue.
But the way that you frame it, it seems to me would be quite effective, which is to say, not only are you needed, judge, but your skills are such that you are being required to work with both hands tied behind your back and a muzzle on yourself right now with the overload that you've got. You cannot do all of the things that you're capable of doing for the 5% who really need you. And not every collaborative case results in a full settlement. So we're going to be right back in your courtroom if it turns out that somebody who entered collaboration is one of that 5% and we didn't notice it at the front end. But we can continue to praise judges for what it is that they can do and help them do it better.
They're the parachute. Most people get off the plane. If they don't, the judiciary is the parachute. But don't make everybody jump out the plane. I mean,
that's a nice metaphor. I usually talk about the courts being the intensive care unit and the emergency room of the legal system, just as those units are in the healthcare system. And you got to be insane to design a system where people are expected to start at the intensive care unit. I
started writing several years ago on do no harm. You know, the doctors, except I spell it K-N-O-W. And that's the problem. We don't know the harm that we're doing because you never see it. Once they go out of the room, you don't understand the fights they're having at the soccer field because they're no longer in my court. Next case, please. You know, and off it goes. So until they realize that, they won't know the need for the collaborative. So we've got a comment from Madeline Landrew saying mental health professionals are the key. They help judges understand how the judicial process stands in the way of helping families heal. And once we can identify those allied judges, you also pointed out the key is bringing a whole team. Yes. How do we do that? Do we invite judges out to lunch? How do we actually literally start the conversation? Yes. I mean, in my situation, I invited the lawyers to lunch, which confused them to no end. Okay, that's not, but if you can go to the judge, do ahead of time. So we have an idea and pitch it this way. We have an idea, but we need your help in how to guide it. Can you tell us the inner workings of the courthouse? Can you help us get reduced filing fees, which makes your clerk happier because there's less paperwork? Can we, Judge, this has such great potential, but we can't proceed on until we hear from you. Please come help guide us. If it's part of their program, they're vested. If it's not. So when you get to that meeting, you have to have the mental health person, because when the judge starts saying, well, what do you do with the high conflict situation? And the lawyer says, wow, the mental health person steps right in and say, there are ways we diffuse that. that don't bring in the legal. The existence of a legal hammer is destructive to the process. So once the judge understands by farming out the mental health and the financial issues, don't ask me what the basis of the house is when I'm deciding what's going on. Get that to a financial neutral that really knows what's happening. So that's the key. Invite them to lunch. Invite them to conference, to go to their conference, their local judicial conference. After you get one judge that says, guys, this dog may hunt. I mean, we may find some good stuff here. See if they will sponsor you to come and make a presentation to their bank of family judges.
That's interesting.
So you can do that. Get some judges not on the bench saying, on the domestic bench, saying, our judiciary, through these wonderful people, is bettering the children's lives in our community. That's the kind of stuff that plays the judges to being thought leaders, except that 30% of them are going to get their salary, they're going to apply the law. You don't go after all of them. Go against the humanists. Go against the person that's going to do some leadership and ask them for help.
That seems to me to be key, and it strikes me that maybe the first ask, the most effective first ask in your initial contacts with a local family judge is going to be not asking them to stake their reputations before they know what you can do, but rather ask them to accept your free help in a program that they can get credit for.
There's an enormous disconnect between what we already understand and know and what the judge has to do. And if you go in too fast and disconnect it, then you're not there. You need to fish. You need to first have the lure. Then you need to gently set the hook. The whole time keeping the rod tip up. You need to work. Now some, like Madeline, I go back to Madeline because she's one of my favorite people. Madeline jumped in the boat. You didn't have to fish with her. She heard you and she was in the boat, okay? But most judges, with the things we've talked about, what it can do for you, your status, whether you're elected or appointed, if you're suddenly seen as a leader, nobody else runs against you. Nobody else tries. So there's the political benefit. And then you go back in and say, and judge, besides that, your life is better. It's more rewarding because you're helping kids have a safe environment, not just who picks them up at soccer, but your life is better and your marriage is better and your relationship with your children is better because you are in the salvation, not the destruction role.
So we begin then by offering them something like, one of these free courthouse lobby type help desks where we are able to match self-represented parties with collaborative teams for free and low-cost services. Then we come back, they are already a leader in their local court because they're the judge that made this happen. And we have conversations with them about how it reduces the vicarious trauma for everybody in the system to have this kind of resource available. And only then do we start pitching, well, maybe we could make a presentation with you. You could introduce us and we could present to your colleagues in the courthouse who aren't the family law judge. And then maybe you could do a joint program with us at the Judicial College. And step by step, you just expand that judge's leadership in ways they didn't know they could do.
And you have to take the step by step because of that disconnect. I had a judge with a hearing officer that made a recommendation, and I was trying to explain to him in my excitement, and his response was, well, if they don't take the hearing officer's suggestion, I make them pay for it. He was lost. I mean, he was lost because then it was, don't make me do my job. We have to go in and get them to the point to say, we're doing your job. We're helping you do your job in such a wonderful way.
We are your best allies and best helpers, and there's no way we can interfere because if it's not working, they come right back to you.
And don't get disheartened because there are judges who are caught up in the institution and the power of judge. Nobody can use a carrot as well as I can use a stick.
Yeah.
And so don't get discouraged when you hit that. Just don't waste the energy and move on to the next one.
Precisely. Now I'm going to stop here for a second and look at a question posted by Neil Kahn. I think I'll respond to this one. How does a judge send a matter that started as a litigated matter to collaboration if the lawyers would have to give way? Well, the answer, Neil, is we don't try to do that. That's a recipe for total failure. That's going to explode. You're going to get the opposition of the traditional family law bar, and the judge is going to hate that. And it's the end of the story really fast. That is not what we're trying to do. And we've got to reassure judges that we are not trying to do that, at least not when we're partnering with them. We might in other ways, in other contexts, try to do that, but not with the family law judge.
Once they're lawyered up with litigators,
Oh, you go ahead, Ross.
So once they're lawyered up with litigators, then you need a different triage system. That was my whole effort, was how do I get to them before they get to me?
Yes.
Then it was how do I get to them before they get to the lawyers? Because they will, people refer them to, oh, this is the meanest lawyer in town. He'll do a great job for you. They think they're helping. They're not. They're not doing them a favor.
So these educational efforts up at higher levels of the judiciary, in other words, the local judges conference, the Judicial College, and judges conferences and organizations, it is to educate judges as thought leaders. At the retail level, it's your local judge and how can you make a difference right there in your local community. But at the higher levels of organization, where you're speaking to judges as a group, it's not just the family law judges. You are turning the Titanic and getting your judicial system in the larger sense to understand that those bulldog piranha lawyers, they are part of the intensive care unit. They are not part of helping families. That's what you do when all help efforts have failed. And once you educate the larger group of judges about that, then you've made an impact.
There are some lawyers that will turn the Titanic and look for another iceberg. They just don't understand the damage that's done. So that's back to the education, to the awokeness, the awareness, just to get them there. And it's difficult because they're so entrenched.
So we have run out of our time right about now. Is there anything else that I've forgotten to ask you, Russ, that you think this group, worldwide group of collaborative professionals, might like to know from your perspective?
Baby steps. We've been taking them for 30 years, but we have to keep taking them. And I think it's time to start moving from baby steps to bigger steps, more proactive work. And I understand it's hard maintaining your own practice and saving the world. But I'm betting the people on this webinar want to save the world.
We want to save the world, and in trying to do our best to get the message out where it needs to go, we are also benefiting ourselves. We all benefit from this, because what we've always wanted as a movement is for everyone in every community to think of and to understand collaborative team conflict resolution as the way that people who are capable of rising to the occasion handle their divorces. If you're going to do the socially responsible divorce that everybody in the community needs from you, divorcing couple, because it's not just about you, it's about the community you live in and the kind of children you're going to be able to raise after your divorce. Once you understand that, when you get that message out into the entire community, then people are going to be choosing collaborative lawyers, and we're all going to benefit without having to push rocks uphill all by ourselves.
It is to rephrase divorce to transition instead of war. It's just a transition. As my good friend Jerry said early on, he was one of the early adopters on this. He said, we are saving families one divorce at a time. What a concept.
What a concept.
You're going to get the divorce. 17% or so don't. I mean, when they go through the process, they don't need it. But that's changing the culture, which will help with the judges. Judge, you're no longer asked to cut this knot in half. You're asked to untangle the knot so that we don't destroy the ropes, that we have two damaged but usable ropes that can be rebraided back into people taking care of the children.
So this is normalizing collaborative team divorce as the way that a responsible, civilized, ethical person will want to do a divorce. And you do the other if you fail at that, but you don't start there. We're going to have to wrap up, but I'm noticing that Tasha, thank you, Tasha Bevan Stewart has said that she wants to thank us both for our time, that this is so inspirational for all of them. Thank you so much, Tasha. And I really would invite any of you who share Tasha's sentiment to go over to the chat function, and or you could stay in question and answer. You can do that either place, but give us some feedback. Is this something you're going to take and run with? Is this useful? Have we been concrete in the suggestions that have come out of this conversation? And does this webinar series have meaning?
And if you have something that's worked, tell us that too.
It's helping you do that. And Ross, again, thank you so much.
Oh, Pauline, thank you. You keep leading, I'll keep following.
Well, by my side. Thank you so much. And bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this recorded program presented by the Online Academy of the Integrative Law Institute at Commonweal, known as ILLI. You'll find many more webinars, video workshops, and conversations on our website. But even better, subscribe to ILLI's YouTube channel for early access to cutting-edge video programming made specifically for conflict resolution professionals. Our programs are either free or priced very affordably, but the production costs run high in both time and money. So if you like this program, please help us produce more high-quality videos like it by making a tax-deductible contribution today to the Integrative Law Institute. Thank you.